Welcome to Real Estate Talk from a lender's perspective. I'm Anitra Preston.
And I'm Elridge Moore.
And today we're going to talk about how to become a hard money lender.
So I think the first step of becoming a hard money lender is to have some experience. I know they have guys out here who started hard money lending with no experience in the space. But for me, I believe that you should have some experience because that's how you could be a mitigate risk and be a good steward to our capital partners' money. So that's the first thing first for me.
Yeah, I agree. You have a lot of hard money private lenders in the space, whether they're small or large. A lot of them come from a background of finance. They were some type of investment banker. And it's very rare that you have an actual real estate investor who turned lender. And I think being able to evaluate properties in your market to determine what is a deal and what's not a good deal, I think that's...
Yeah, definitely. Because honestly, I wouldn't feel safe writing a loan if I didn't have experience. And my experience is property evaluation. I probably evaluated thousands of deals in the New Orleans metro area. And your experience stemmed from...
A lot,
yeah.
Like, as a real estate investor, as a real estate agent, I'm not going to extend a loan on something that I wouldn't buy myself. If I'm not going to buy it, then I definitely wouldn't lend on it. You have to become super the expert in evaluation properties in your market, right?
Yeah.
I think you and I, by us being in the New Orleans market and having a lot of experience, pretty much got it down packed by the street, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
When you say somebody comes with the street address.
Somebody could come with the street address, the 100 block, and we know exactly where it's at.
We know it, yeah.
And that's the first step to us in becoming a hard money lender is the experience. What do you believe the second step to become a hard money lender? So I
don't think you need, I think the misconception, step number 2 is the misconception though, there's a misconception that you need 6-7 figures to get started.
Yeah, of your own money, yeah.
Of your own money to get started, and I think that's not true. We didn't start off with a whole lot of we started off with our cash, that is true. We started off with our cash because we wanted to test things out. That was our second deal. Our first deal, our accountant came to us.
Yeah, our accountant, yeah.
And we used her cash to do one of our first 2 deals in the real estate lending, where we actually used her money and loaned it out to ourselves. So we kind of used ourselves as like the dummy, so to speak.
Right. And I think that's important.
Right.
Just getting into the space, you don't want to do a deal and use someone else, like test it on yourself, because then you can know the whole process and the process work. And you trust yourself, so you're not going to do wrong by the money. That was very important for us to get started with ourselves.
Going back to the original statement about a whole lot of cash, you don't really need a whole lot of cash. What you need is the most important part with the cash, it has to be something that you don't need.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So whatever that dollar amount is, you don't need it. Meaning you don't need it in the next 6 months. You don't need it in the next 12 months. You have a backup plan. The capital partners who you use, this is idle cash that would have been sitting around for 12 months or more anyway. So that's important.
And also what's important with capital is that bringing on investors, right? So we did start with our account, then we put some, for our second deal, we used our own money. But when we got started bringing on investors, let's talk about that. Like, what did that look like, bringing on investors? Who did we reach out to? And
when you first starting out, of course, raising capital. Raising capital throughout your whole entire existence, always priority number 1. It's always going to be a seesaw balance where you have more cash and not enough deals. You have more deals and not enough cash. I personally believe there is a balance to it, right?
Yeah.
And that's constantly raising cash and constantly marketing for borrowers. Those are 2 components that should never cease, because either one could crash your business.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's different for everybody's situation. Because if you just sold a business for $40 million, you have more cash than you have deal flow, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I think, but for us, we, like Anitra said, is that seesaw balance where we always have to raise capital. We always have to market for good deals.
Right.
And sometimes we have more deals than cash. Sometimes we have more cash than deals. And that's the battle we are going through, especially in our first 2 years with vertical capital.
To start off, it's like with anything that you've heard this advice before, right? You want to tap into your friends and family, right?
Yeah.
And I know you're thinking, I don't know anybody with cash. I thought the same thing. And when I really started thinking about it and we really started talking to family and friends, like we signed up like what, almost $500,000 just talking to our friends and family. And you really would be surprised who you think doesn't have the cash versus who you think has the cash. For us, it's always been a direct opposite, right? The people who we thought didn't have it are the ones that have it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this come to mind with one of our capital investors. This guy is a Uber driver. He an Instacart guy, and he just saved his money. But he was able to give us $80,000 cash, and that was our first investor.
It was our first investor, and guys, you're just gonna be super surprised who have it. We had another investor. She worked at a donut shop. She had what, 70K?
Yep.
She had like 70K just sitting around and not necessarily using the money at that particular time. She's not our long-term investor, but she was or is one of our first investors that was able to come on board. Maybe like in year 1 or year 2. She came on board and she had the $70,000 to invest with her. We were able to get her working a little bit. But again, you got to start with what we call like your sphere, what they call sphere 1, right? Those are the people that are closest to you. To get started in that. And again, the key with that is the cash. You also have to make sure that they have the cash to sit in a deal for a year.
I think filtering the investor and the personality types are very, very important. Like Anitra said, is they have to have an extra minimum amount. So here at Vertical Capital, our minimum amount is $50,000, and they have to have an extra $50,000. I can't emphasize that enough. We had to give one of our investors their money back because they were an active investor and they needed their $50,000 to invest in something else. So it's just very important to make sure they have the extra money. And high network individuals, and also personality types matter as well. You don't want someone that's hovering over your shoulder looking at every single move. We want our investors to give us full autonomy and trust our experience. You know, like Anitra said, she have insurance, construction, real estate agent, developer, commercial developer, everything. And me, wholesaling, buy and hold investor, commercial properties, we just all around fit to make good decisions for the capital.
Yeah, you don't, like you piggybacking off what you said, two things we've learned. An active investor, someone you out here know that's doing deals constantly, they're probably not your ideal capital partner.
Exactly.
Because their cash is always working in something else. And, we've run across like 4 or 5 of them that say, hey, yeah, we're going to invest with you. I'm going to invest with you. That was 3 years ago, right? And they still haven't come back. I'm not saying it's a waste of a relationship. It's just that if they are actively fixing and flipping or they're actively developing, they don't, the truth is they don't have the cash to invest in your business unless they see, right? Unless they see a vision. But the problem is right now they're working their own vision, and it's not a problem, but it's probably just not the ideal person that you want to, rely on as a source of capital. And 2, like he said, when we put a deal out there to our capital partners, we have full autonomy. It's not a decision as to whether or not they want to do this deal or they don't, or they don't want to do this deal. If they're questioning you on the deal and whether or not it's a good deal, now this is barring you have experience
Yeah.
with evaluating
Yeah.
properties, right? And you have the experience of bringing good deals to the table. If they're questioning you on that deal, that's probably not your ideal capital partner.
Exactly.
Either. We've been fortunate though that I would have to say like 99.9% of our capital partners, we don't even hear from them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, we get angry
Yeah.
when we try to catch them on a call. We want to
Yeah.
show them their portfolio. Like
Yeah.
our group of capital partners are really just
Yeah, and since we don't hear from them, and that's what made us like create processes to pretty much reach out to them. So right now we send monthly statements with Vertical Capital. We send every time we receive an interest payment and we paid out, we distributed an interest payment.
right.
We send weekly newsletters to our capital investors just so they could like stay connected with us. You know, usually when someone making an investment, the person or the company they made that investment go ghost. You know, we heard that from a lot of our capital investors, like they just go ghost after they made that investment. But we want to stay connected and stay transparent, and that's very, very important with us at Vertical Capital.
All right, so I think we talked about like step one was get some experience in
Yeah.
evaluating properties. We talked about what
Capital raising.
what you need, and basically debunking the myth that you need hundreds and millions of thousands of dollars to get started. I would say with that, you need to identify what your average and size deal is going to be, and you probably need to have at least that amount or so, right? When you think. Or you can just do some smaller deals
Like just the acquisition, yeah.
Right, you don't have to fund the whole thing, like as far as the acquisition and the fix and flip to get started. Or maybe you might just stick to people that buy land, right? Who buy land and are flipping that land without development. That may be a avenue for you to explore, right? Because those deals tend to be a little bit smaller.
Yeah, definitely.
In deal size, and that might be something to help you get started. Again, we focused on short term too, because we wanted the velocity of money to work in our favor to build up our capital. So
yeah, definitely.
those are some pointers. So we talked about capital raising and having the experience of evaluating property. What's the third step, you think?
So the third step is actually underwriting and getting leads coming in. What's the best deal to loan on? So I guess we could talk about our marketing and how we get those leads coming in. Our marketing, we have a newsletter. So we built up a network of fix and flippers, buy and hold investors through our experience with wholesaling properties. And we converted that email list to our newsletter, our Vertical Capital newsletter list. So weekly, we send out a newsletter, it could be just funded $300,000 last week. Or do you need a deal funded? Or just an update on the market, or something educational that we listened to a podcast on, that we read in a book, and anything about real estate, we'll send it to that newsletter just to stay in front of those fix and flippers, those buy and hold investors on top of their mind pretty much. And also we have an Instagram where we have testimonials on the Instagram, deals we funded, reels of us going through inspections on properties and things like that. And that pretty much sums up our marketing.
Elridge, that's an ideal way to get leads, right? So what if someone, I think that way we were already in the investment world, right? We were already in that. You already had that list from wholesaling, but tell the people really like
how you build that list.
Yeah, like so. Say for instance, what if this person has never done anything in real estate, and and I really want to talk to that person. What if they don't have an email list? Like, what about going to
the RIAs?
Yeah, your local meetups to build that list.
Yeah.
You want
well, yeah, definitely. Like to start a list from Ground zero, and that's a good point.
Right.
Thank you for that. So you have to attend your local RIA meetings. Go to you can go to meetup.com and figure out anybody that's talking about real estate. You need to be there and collecting business cards and things like that. So we have a RIA meeting here in New Orleans, the West Bank RIA, and they have a list of all of the email addresses for everyone to sign in. You could take a picture of that piece of paper and add that everyone's email address to your MailChimp email blast. When I first got started, I used to have something I called a ghost ad, where I put fixer upper for sale, $30,000, and put my phone number on it, and everybody used to call me, and I used to collect all of that data.
That's a good idea. You could probably do that even as a lender. You could probably start off with that ghost ad.
You could start off with that. So that's a ghost ad, right? So I used to put little signs out on the street, 30 signs out, and collect all of those phone numbers and email addresses and build your email list.
So networking, basically.
Yeah, networking, for sure.
Networking at the local RIAs is a good way to get started with building that email list. And when you're ready to lend, just send out an email blast.
Yep.
Stating what type of loan products you have. That's another thing too. You got to determine what type of loan offerings are you going to offer. We decided to stick in the short-term space, 6 months. This year we added 12 months. Mm-hmm. The last 2 years we were only doing 6 months. Again, the 6 months was important to us because it created a compounding effect in the velocity. And we'll go into all of those terms later on, but it created a compounding and velocity effect, meaning we were able to lend our money out, get our money back, and possibly use it 2 times, along with the interest that it accrued from the first time, back out to our lenders. We were also already, like I said, we're already real estate investors. So we were able to, when we decided to branch off from ourselves, we were able to tell a small group of people, 1 or 2 people that we knew and trust that were active investors, as well. So building relationships.
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about the process and the paperwork it involved to making a loan. And I know you pretty much over the paperwork of everything, right? Making sure we have all our docs in order, right?
So just like you want to be transparent with your capital partners, you definitely want to be transparent with your borrowers, right? And having all of your paperwork. So another thing you're gonna need an attorney, not necessarily a title attorney, but maybe a real estate attorney, to help you to develop your loan documents. Every state is different. Louisiana, we operate only in Louisiana. Our loan documents aren't that extensive. It's the language that we have. Typically, you're gonna, I'm speaking to my Louisiana people. Again, anybody outside Louisiana, you definitely need to consult with a real estate attorney. Again, a real estate attorney, title company, or escrow attorney might not necessarily be your overall best resource, but it is a resource to use, right, to get started with some documentation. So for us, we have what we call lending of intent at LOI.
Letter of intent.
Letter of intent, where once the application comes in, we underwrite the application, we like the deal, we extend an offer to lend. On the letter of intent, or what some people may call a term sheet, it spells out all of our terms to the borrower, right? And we have the borrower sign that sheet. That's the term sheet. That term sheet will really go to the title company when they begin to process your HUDs and stuff like that. Some of the key components to our paperwork is, 1, you want a promissory note and you want a mortgage. The promissory note ties the mortgage to you as the creditor on that particular property. We always want to be in first lien position. Not to say that second lien position is bad. That's a different animal. But primarily, you need a promissory note and you need a mortgage to that. Some of the documentation that I collect is all the necessary insurances that we require. We We require flood insurance here. Of course, we're in Southeast Louisiana, where floods are inevitable. Bound to be one. There was one last week, and it was just a thunderstorm.
Yeah.
So flood is important to us. The builder's risk insurance, that's important to us. And also general liability. So we require general liability for the borrower to get, and also general liability for if there's any construction involved for the contractor to get. Right, it's two separate policies. We want the contractor to be accountable for any accidents if that happens under his watch, and if someone's just visiting a property, we want to make sure that the borrower is secured like this. Paperwork is important. Most importantly, it's the promissory note and the mortgage.
Secure, right?
That keeps us somewhat secured.
Yeah.
There's always, of course, there's a heavy risk involved
Yeah.
when you lend someone some money on a property.
Yeah.
We want to talk about that. But do we talk about like what LTV
Yeah.
that we lend on and why?
All right. At Vertical Capital, we lend 65% of LTV. So that's LTV, for those who don't know, that's loan to value. So the value of the property is $100,000. We lend up to 65%. So we'll lend up to $65,000 on a $100,000 property. Is because that give us a cushion. That give us a cushion for the equity portion, right? So $65,000 loan, $100,000 value, we have $35,000 of equity. That's what you wanted me to touch on?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know why we went into this.
Yeah, so
then kind of got off course.
Yeah. So I wanted us to touch on. So we went over having experience, capital raising. We went over how to find a good deal, right?
Right.
We went over the paperwork. Once we close a loan, let's just say this loan construction portion of the deal, right?
Right.
What is the process managing that from the time we cut the first draw check to the end of the deal to closing?
Oh, so the borrower has to fill out so for us, we do an advance draw. So we're doing all the evaluation regarding the construction and rehab process before we close the deal. We're sending out our construction manager out to the site. Our construction managers are also evaluating contracts.
Can we add the credentials of our construction manager? Because that's important for us. And that also allows us to protect our capital investors' money by having someone who have a commercial license and a residential license to go out there and inspect these properties and making sure things get done. That's very important.
So in the beginning, we actually used a licensed
Inspector,
home inspector,
yeah.
right? That's an option. For those who are getting started and you don't really necessarily have certain relationships built yet. I recommend you starting off with a state licensed home inspector, right? You might not necessarily do a full report. We weren't doing full reports.
Yeah.
Again, that comes with experience because we trusted the reports that were given to us. Again, having that construction eye, a lot of stuff, some things from photos I can see, but then there's going to be other things from photos I couldn't see, such as foundation issues and things of that nature. But I can pretty much, if you send me a picture of the ceiling, it's got a bunch of leaks or the drywall is all discolored and all that, obviously the roof needs to be changed, right? I don't know how much or what portion it does, but on your itemization, I'm going to be looking for a full roof replacement, especially if this is a fix and flip. Why not?
Right.
You want to get max value.
Exactly.
But getting a little bit off course here, but our construction manager is a licensed contractor, tons and tons of experience on the commercial and residential side. So we send him out to evaluate, take photos for us, things that might have been missed by the actual borrower prior to closing the loan out. And then from there, once we understand the complexity of the project, we make a determination based off the budget of how much of the advance we're going to do. Now, that's evolved over time, right? So right now we're going up 20%.
Up to 20%.
of an advance draw at the closing. And so on the second draw, now they have to have fulfilled all of the obligations for the first draw. draw before they can request a second draw. Is that kind of like what we?
Yeah, and to add to that, we figure out the completion percentage for the second draw.
Yeah, the
So-
completion percentage, right?
So that first draw should have got them to a certain stage in the project. And then once send our inspector out, we figure out the completion percentage. And then we, like, let's just say they've completed 50% of exterior paint. That second draw would be 50% of exterior paint.
And I think the importance, though, if you're funding the construction, this is so important. You don't want to give somebody, just like anything, if you were running a project yourself, you would never pay a contractor the majority of his money prior to the project being completed.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a sure loss, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how much you trust that person or whatever. You just don't do that. So
And you saying that from the borrower perspective.
I'm saying that from the borrower's perspective. Never give, a contractor all of the money up front. You lose control of your project like that. And so the same principle applies as the lender, right? You don't want to give the borrower and his contractor, let's say it's a $200,000 construction, right? We have one today, right? $200,000 new construction. In this case, we didn't necessarily give him money up front because in New Orleans, the permitting process can take up to 4 to 5 months. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make sense to give somebody an advance draw on a new construction and they ain't doing nothing with the money.
Right.
They can't do anything because they don't have a permit.
Yeah.
So in this case, we ended up waiting 3 weeks for them to get the permit. And today we decided to issue like 20%. So we issued 40%, or 40,000 of their budget. Now, some of that money is going to go towards the permit, but we're not releasing all 200,000. And you also want to have a holdback in your process. You got to figure out what that holdback is going to be, right? Maybe it's 10% of each of the draw. So if they're coming in at 20,000 for draw number 2, maybe you hold back 2,000
Right.
for each draw, right? So you could do an advance. We do an advance and still we do a holdback. It's kind of like an oxymoron, but it's working out for us.
It's working out for us.
Another thing too with that is lien waivers. Gosh, this is so important. You might want to consider adding a lien waiver to your process. And basically what it is you can do it for every draw. I guess I need to explain. Do I need to explain what a lien waiver is?
We'll go in detail.
A lien waiver is basically
Yeah.
the contractor basically in exchange for this amount being paid that he will not or his subs will not put a lien on the property.
Right.
It depends on the operator. We're pretty good at picking out who's operating a project, but pretty much you can do it per each draw, or you can do it at the end of all the draws. So basically for the sum of 200,000, this contractor is saying, hey, I received all $200,000 project, and so therefore I've been made whole and I'm not gonna put a lien on the property.
So anything we didn't cover in how to become a hard money lender? I think we covered everything.
I'm not sure. What you think?
Yeah, I think we covered everything. We covered having experience, capital raising to finding the deal, in the process of funding the deal to completing the project. The only thing I could say is that every hard money lending company is set up differently. We decided to go the private route and get private individuals, right? Instead of going the institutional route, because this would be a totally different setup. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it would be a totally different setup. So listen, to touch on that, if you didn't want to use private money, there are companies out there that will allow you to white label. So you basically, to me, I'm not trying to be, white labeling is basically, I think, in my opinion, makes you kind of like a glorified.
Definitely.
Because you don't get to set the terms, they do.
Yeah, definitely. And we could go into white labeling on another video.
Right,
But I think we covered everything. I guess to wrap this up, just like and subscribe for more content.
Yeah, if you like what you heard, you have any questions, shoot us a comment or a question in the comment section.
Yeah.
We'll definitely try our best to and answer the question for you.
Yeah.